Okay. Hello, good morning. We are live. We're back. It's fall break. It's finally sunny outside. It's not fall break. What am I talking about? It's just break in
No, I think you've
general.
just gone back to
Yeah.
I
America,
did.
like
It's definitely spring
full
here.
break.
Like
Yeah.
fall break, and
No,
that's such
like
an
that's back
American
in
term.
October,
Yeah, exactly. And it's such an
September.
American term. Silly me.
But isn't that
Welcome.
something of the pandemic, Anne, that we lose track of time?
It's true. Yeah. But I'm glad it's spring, not
Yes.
autumn, to be honest. I'm loving
Exactly.
the blooms, the warmer weather, the sunshine. And I'm happy to welcome Alan here with us this morning and Ross as well. I'm Anne. For those of you who don't know me, I'm on the Praxis team, and I also wear different hats in ministry with Breathe Community and the chaplaincy program in the YMCAs in Ireland. And I have Ross with us today. He's on the Praxis team as well, and he's also a business owner. So he's joining me as kind of co-host. And we are blessed to have Alan with us today to share a bit about Serve the City and how he is missional in his life. So I'll hand it. Oh, no, wait, I have to ask you, what's your favorite pancake topping? Because it's Pancake Tuesday, little fun fact about ourselves. What's your go-to topping?
Mine's probably blueberries and
Ooh.
maple syrup.
Oh,
I think
together.
they're my go-to ones. Yeah, yeah. Very non-Irish, actually.
Yeah, nice. What about you, Ross?
I live in a household full of women who love pancakes and waffles and crepes. So I think we're literally going for the whole hog today. We've had them for breakfast. There's a lunchtime menu, and there'll be an evening crepe extravaganza. So the girls have got this peanut butter salted caramel
Oh,
thing this morning, which
Wow.
was, yeah, I must say, very, very nice. So we'll have to try
wow.
that later. But
Salted caramel.
yeah,
You're
so
getting a good run into start of Lent then, right?
we're definitely going full at it. This is like stocking up
That's
for 40
gas.
days.
I think
So
mine's
no
probably like
pancakes.
Nutella and raspberries together. If I love
Ooh, yeah.
raspberries and a bit of chocolate and hazelnut. Like real melted too, fresh off the pan, so good.
Mm.
Nice.
Yeah.
Have you had it yet?
No, I made
No.
waffles yesterday actually, and there were some leftovers, so I had some this morning because I felt like I couldn't make pancakes yesterday before Pancake Tuesday.
Mm.
So yeah, kind of cheating on
Probably
pancakes a
jumping the
little
gun a
bit.
bit, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So I think my housemate and I are going to make pancakes tonight of some sort. So it'd be great. Thanks, guys. Alan, do you want to just tell us a bit about yourself, all sort of aspects of life?
Sure, yeah. I suppose maybe starting off born and raised in Dublin a good number of years ago, but have lived overseas, lived in the US for a while, and in fact, that's where I really came to faith, or where I first
Hmm,
encountered Jesus was in the US, yeah, in
cool.
Chicago. I'm married to Cheryl. We have three sons. Two are no longer living at home; they're living away, and one still living with us. So the dynamics in our house have changed quite a bit over the years. We did get a COVID puppy
Oh,
about 12 months ago, and so it feels like we now have a daughter finally in the house. So we have our little puppy Rigby,
Rigby.
who's like our daughter we never had. And yeah, I suppose for many years, when I returned to Dublin, worked in the business world, was sort of involved in various churches, I suppose ministry of various types. Um, um, uh, Currently working with a Christian International Development Aid organization, Team Hope. But really, over the years, have been involved in various types of church ministry, Christian ministry, including church planting, particularly
Cool.
in the early 2000s.
That's awesome. It's great. Thanks.
And Alan, you're involved in Serve the City, which we want to hear a little bit more about
Mm.
today. So, do you want to just tell us a little bit about what Serve the City is and how you got involved in it and
Mm.
some of the things that you're engaged in now?
Sure, yeah. Well, I suppose it was really out of that church planting kind of context that myself and Cheryl were in the early 2000s that we were in a little bit of a fallow period, I guess you might say, but we were still sort of aspiring church planters. And um, we were, we kind of heard about through some friends that had started this thing called Serve the City over in Brussels, actually. And so after doing our own sort of research and checking it out and chatting with our friends, sort of decided, hey, I think this Serve the City concept, might really work within Dublin.
That's cool.
And so it was really born out of that sense of wanting to almost like do something between church plants that I got involved in Service City. I always liked volunteering. I had always been involved in volunteering, even when I was growing up in Dublin in my late teens. I got involved in volunteering, and so I just liked the idea of sort of joining with other volunteers. Finding a way of sort of being at sort of grassroots community
Yeah.
engagement, and had tried to do that within a church planting context, and had sort of tried that on several occasions, but it hadn't just really sort of didn't take. But
Okay.
so really launched into Service City with that desire in mind, I guess, and really not really thinking it was almost like a temporary thing that I might be trying out. So what are we 15, 16 years later, I'm
Wow.
still involved.
Temporary.
Still loving it, and it's expanded, beyond my sort of wildest, I guess, dreams or expectations. It started off with my wife and I, Cheryl, and a few friends sitting around our kitchen table. We're now, we've probably something like over 1,000 volunteers
Wow.
involved, operating and engaging with volunteers and volunteer involving projects within Dublin, also in Galway. We have a team
Cool.
leading over there, Tim and Christina. Um, and then we were in Cork for a while, and then we lost a leader there, and so it's gone a bit fallow there at the moment as well in Cork. But hoping to be back down there soon. So that was really very much my, sort of I guess motivation, or some of the context around getting involved in Serve City, all those years ago.
Cool. And so it is kind of a global movement. It's not just kind of European even, is it?
Well, yeah, Dublin, I think, was like the second or third city that
Okay.
started this thing called Serve the City, as I say, about 15, 16 years ago. It then sort of just mushroomed over the next sort of 10, 12 years. And, so I was involved in, obviously, in what we were doing here in Dublin and in Ireland, and then eventually established Serve the City Ireland as a registered charity and a
Yeah.
company limited by guarantee, and sort of going through that part of it. But I was also involved for a number of years with Serve City International, which
Okay.
then sort of became the international network or association of like-minded cities and like-minded individuals. And again, a very broad range of people. As I say, started in, really focused in Europe.
Okay.
So a number of European countries. But then about, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years ago, we started with a lot of cities in the US, African cities,
Okay.
Far East. We had a Russian city then get involved. So yeah, it's just really grown almost virally. There was no great master plan of sort of global domination, or high level strategic plan involved. It just sort of evolved and grew organically, with people to people.
That's
And if
cool.
you were to sum up in maybe 2 or 3 sentences the vision of Serve the City, how would you describe that in terms of, particularly in Ireland and in Dublin?
Hmm.
I suppose it really depends on the context, because I think Serve the City has sort of become quite a number of things to a wide range of individuals. So certainly when I'm talking to my Christian friends and pastor friends and church leader friends, I tend to sort of talk about Service City, even though we're a civil society organization.
Hmm.
We're not a religious organization, but I sort of describe it to them in terms of justice and mission in action. And it's a way in which people from across the community, from any perspective, any background, with faith, no faith, a different faith, whatever, they can all get involved in this thing called Serve the City, and they can
Cool.
get involved, as a volunteer, and get involved in any number of the types of volunteer involving projects that we have. So generally, when I'm in that sort of context, Ross, that tends to be
Mm.
how I describe it. And I think that generally gets the message across. If I'm pushed, I'll then sort of say, well, look, it's really about for me personally, in my in my walk with Jesus and trying to be a disciple of Jesus. It's how I actually try to go about
Mm.
loving my neighbor as myself. But I say that from a very personal perspective, and it's clear that many hundreds of volunteers get involved in Serve the City, and they bring their own motivation, their own triggers, their own perspectives on why they do it. But
Yeah.
that's generally how I would describe it.
Yeah, I like that. Justice and mission in action. It sums that. Could you give us a few examples of some of the projects that you have engaged in, or a typical Serve the City project? I know there's a variety of them,
Yeah.
but is there kind of some broad sort of categories that Serve the City are engaged in?
Yeah, so in Dublin and also in Galway, where our team are there, as I mentioned earlier, certainly prior to 2020, and particularly March 2020 and COVID-19, we were very much involved in sort of practical DIY type projects, either helping marginalized and vulnerable people in their homes with a bit of
Right.
painting, decorating, a lot of dehoarding, decluttering,
Okay.
particularly for elderly people or for people that have, some sort of a physical, disability of some kind. Or in Galway, they have been great in being involved in a lot of the Tidy Towns initiatives.
Oh
So they
yeah.
would have a lot of volunteers to kind of come along and to help in those kinds of projects. So typically it would be sort of very practical kind of stuff. And it's the
Cool.
kind of stuff where anybody and everybody, you don't even need English,
Oh yeah.
you
Yeah.
just roll up your sleeves and you just see other people picking up litter or painting or decluttering, and you don't even need the English language to be able to communicate what's going on there. And so we've had Brazilian students, we've had all sorts of different people, refugee, asylum seeker friends kind
Okay.
of come along, and some of them just do not have any English and they'll get involved. So that was very much the type of stuff that we were doing, sort of like prior to COVID. Obviously, that's changed now, since COVID and the social distancing and physical
Yeah.
restrictions.
Of
We've
course.
obviously, adhering to the government guidelines around that. And so we've sort of changed. It's still very much practically orientated, but we very much got involved about this time, or March, April last year, with Community Call, which
Okay.
was part of the government's, national government's initiative to engage organizations from the community and voluntary sector to help people within communities. So it was very much kind of stuff that we were already doing, but it sort of came under a Community Call umbrella. So that included things like volunteers doing shopping for people who are cocooning at home or shielding at home. Obviously, they couldn't, they were vulnerable and they couldn't come out. They had no maybe family or friends or support network to be able to go
Mm.
shopping for them.
Bless.
We've done kind of Meals on Wheels types of things where we're delivering hot meals. We've done some emergency gardening. We've had some emergency gardening cases where literally the Meals on Wheels people, volunteers, couldn't get through to the front door to
Whoa.
deliver the meals. So we've
Bless.
even done some emergency gardening jobs, which have helped the smooth delivery of meals to people in their homes. But it's also about creating a space so that you can have that conversation with people too.
Mm.
Obviously, you're respecting social distancing and social guidelines, but people have been starved of connection.
Yeah.
They've been starved of in-person interaction. So often, that interaction happens, the length of the driveway, whatever that might be, 2 meters, 4 meters, whatever it is. Sometimes it's, 2 meters back from their front door as they come out to pick up their groceries. You've obviously got your mask on, and they can't see your face, but you're having the chats, as they say, and just having a few words, and just the words
Smiling with your eyes.
smiling with their eyes and, sort of giving them happy movements, and that
Yeah.
sort of stuff behind the mask. But it's really trying to create that space. And
Mm.
I think both the volunteers, particularly during, the last 9, 10 months of COVID-19 and lockdowns, have really appreciated that. There's a sense of where they've been able to really get involved in the community.
Yeah, that's
For many
great.
volunteers, it's often they would say, it's something they've been meaning to do for many, many years.
Yeah.
They just never got round to it because they were so busy, with work and other responsibilities. But when you're locked in at home and
Yeah.
you can't go to work maybe, or unfortunately, you've been furloughed from work,
Mm.
you still want to feel like you can make a contribution, and a valuable contribution. And so that's very much been the kind of stuff that we've done. We started a food bank during the summer, last summer, with the support of two local authorities in the Dublin area. We started a food bank, but we've had something like about 700 volunteers just in the
Wow.
last 10 months that we've onboarded. And just, the challenge has just been trying to find, meaningful, significant ways in which they can get involved that are valuable both to them, but
Mm.
also very valuable to the people that they're serving. And so
Yeah.
trying to get that balance right in terms of formal volunteer involving, and making sure we're doing some good within the community and loving our neighbours.
Yeah.
One of the things I love what you're saying there, Alan, is that sense of partnership. I think
Mm.
one of the things we're trying to do as Praxis Movement is try to just enlarge people's imagination around the whole idea of mission. But I just get that sense as you're talking, rather than trying to reinvent the wheel, you're
Yeah.
partnering with the local council, you're partnering with tidy towns, you're partnering with other organizations who are doing similar stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
I just love that idea that we don't always
Mm.
have to come up with
Yeah.
everything, but we have to have a willingness to kind of see what's going on there and get stuck in. And I'm just imagining like delivering meals with a strimmer strapped to your back. It's a whole new meaning to Deliveroo, isn't it? Like someone comes with a hedge cutter just to get through to the front door.
Wow.
But I like
Yeah.
that idea. So like where do most of your projects come from? Like,
Mm.
are they referred from
Mm.
organizations to you? That's one question. And the other one is the volunteers. How do they find out about Serve the City?
Mm. Yeah, so we very much work on a referral basis, and certainly we have, even prior to COVID-19, we were very much, dependent on referrals coming in from public health nurses, community workers, social workers, many of whom were working for the HSE, and they would be involved in helping people and supporting people living at home within the community. They would maybe be helping them from some medical or therapeutic perspective, but they would go into their homes and they would just sort of see, they need a lot, they need a
Yeah.
lot more help than just therapeutic or medical help within the community. And so we would get a lot of referrals. We would also a lot of partnerships through sort of like-minded organizations. So we would have a partnership with the likes of Alone,
Oh yeah.
who really focus on providing community support and befriending support for elderly people living within the community. So we partnerships with them. A wide range of partners that we work with would, that they would know of people living within the community. They would make a referral. We
Yeah.
have a referral process then that we ask them to fill out a referral form, which is available from our website, servethecity.ie. And they would give us just a little bit of information about the client, and then we would sort of go about, helping them, and we would do our own assessment. Um, and
That's
And
so
then
cool.
volunteers.
yeah,
How do volunteers find out? So that's amazing in terms of
mm,
partnerships. The real sense of trust has obviously developed, and the
mm,
relationship between all those organizations is really great. And
Well, and
then in
then
yeah,
terms of
like a nurse maybe can see a garden that needs to be done,
mm,
but obviously she
exactly,
can't do it or he can't do it.
exactly, yeah,
And then they can
exactly,
just know
yeah,
that you're there, which is so brilliant. Like, yeah, and to
yeah,
yeah,
call
yeah,
on you guys
yeah,
then. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead. The volunteers.
Yeah, the volunteers. So we have a very good partnership with quite a number of the volunteer centres around the country. There's about 22 volunteer centres and
Oh,
expanding around the country, which all sort of fall under the umbrella of Volunteer Ireland.
yes.
And
Okay.
both Volunteer Ireland and a good number of the volunteer centres like the Dublin City Volunteer Centre, the Dunleary Rathdown Volunteer Centre, South Dublin, Fingal, Galway. There's a great network of volunteer centres, and they have been invaluable in sort of working with us, helping us to identify, volunteer involving opportunities that we have, how we can craft that and better describe that and put it up on their system. They have a system called iVol, which, so pretty much anyone in the country that's looking to volunteer can use this resource called iVol.
Cool.
And serve the city along with hundreds and hundreds of other volunteer involving organizations that they can choose to get involved. But a lot of it's word of mouth as well. We have people who come, 1 week to a Serve the City volunteer project, and they go, "Wow, this is great! I'm going to tell my friends." And we go, "Great, yeah, tell your friends," or post on Facebook or whatever. And then next week they turn up with their friend, and they go, "Hey, I brought my friend along this week." So it's hey,
Awesome.
great! It's bring a friend week. Brilliant. Okay. So a lot of it's word of mouth. A lot of it's through sort of other community groups as well. Just as you mentioned, Ross, I think there are a lot of people that are, would really love to get involved in something like a food bank, or, helping their neighbors with, delivering groceries, or even DIY projects when we can go back to doing that in people's homes. And they're just not quite sure where to do it. And so a lot of those types of organizations would approach us. Community organizations, but also churches and other faith groups, would approach us. So as you know, Ross, we have a great partnership with 24/7 Prayer in Dublin, but also with say Liffey Valley Vineyard as well. It's been a great partnership working with them, and they've brought teams along with volunteers. Ignite and Urban Junction in Blackrock, which some of you will know. They've been great, and some of the good people there have jumped in and got involved with some of our projects. So it's really a very broad range of ways in which people have get involved.
Yeah.
But it's just been great.
Yeah, it's really good. So we're just conscious of the time. I just want to ask you a question, and then I think I remember being on a project with Serve the City a few years ago, and we were helping a guy move out of his apartment because he was due to be evicted. And I remember talking to him at the end, and he was telling me his eviction meeting is coming up in the next 2 weeks, and he really didn't want to move out. And I just mentioned to him, I said, well, listen, some of us believe that prayer actually does work. And I said, do you mind if we pray for you about this situation? He said, no, please do. And brought it to our community, and we prayed for him. And I remember you telling me a few weeks later that his meeting went so well that the landlord allowed him stay there. And I just reflecting on that, how sometimes we define mission as telling people the right things to believe, or making sure their doctrine is lined up. And obviously all of that is really important. But as I've listened to you, Alan, this morning, just it's a whole new landscape of a holistic view of the gospel and the kingdom flowing into houses, streets, our city. We don't have loads of time on this, but how would you kind of approach or answer that sort of missional, holistic sort of viewpoint of the kingdom of God breaking in and heaven coming to earth?
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, it's really overwhelming to think of, being a part of what God is doing in terms of breaking in with his kingdom into all sorts of different places that, can be totally unexpected and a total surprise, much like the story you've just shared, Ross, which is for us, just a brilliant story to share. But there's so many like that. I remember being helping a school once with a team of volunteers, and we were simply washing down the walls. They hadn't been painted or washed in years, and we were simply washing them down, getting them ready for painting. And I remember we were taking a coffee break or a tea break, and we were having a chat, and I was sort of sitting reasonably close to a couple of volunteers, and one woman all of a sudden just started tearing up. And I sort of, didn't pay it much attention at first, and just sort of wanted to give her some space, or didn't want her to feel awkward in that moment. And she eventually kind of dried up her tears, and then she eventually said, "You know what? Washing the walls in this school is so significant because I went to this school and it wasn't a happy school
Wow.
situation. And she went into some detail which I won't repeat, but she said cleaning the walls of this school is like a cleaning out of my own heart.
Whoa.
And
Amazing.
so something deep was resonating within her that she couldn't even articulate properly.
Mm.
I had no idea going in. I mean, to me, this was just another, painting preparation kind of project.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I was cognizant of the people that were there and the volunteers that we were working with, and they're a huge part of what we do, and we always really try to focus on who we're volunteering with and what the experience is like for them. But there's just so much stuff like that that you can't plan for it. But you know it when you really see it.
Mm.
And when someone is touched like the way I've just outlined, or Ross in the story that you just mentioned with that man, a client that we were serving, something deep is happening
Yeah.
within either the volunteers' lives or else the life of the person we're serving.
Yeah.
And I think that's a part of what we're called to as mission. It's to
Yeah.
churn up the stuff that's often in our hearts that we don't even realize the stuff that's in our hearts or on our hearts
Mm.
or on our minds. And it just gives us a whole new perspective. And in some cases, people then can really open up to, well, what would like what does a different life look like?
Yeah.
What would a life lived differently begin to look like if I were to move away from the things of the past and look to the future?
Mm.
And so just asking these types of questions and opening up that sense of curiosity about what life might be like if it were different. And those sorts of sort of, I think, are critical conversations to
Mm.
have, critical things to have, and I think that's a critical part of being missional.
And I just one thing to name what you've just said there is that it's not the people that necessarily you're doing the work to or for
Hmm.
that get impacted, but it's
Mm.
the volunteers who are helping in the process
Yeah.
are getting impacted as well as they serve, which is such a vision of the kingdom, isn't it? It's not that
Hmm.
we do stuff to other people, but we do it with each other. And
Hmm.
I just love that about
Hmm.
everyone's life is getting transformed
Yeah.
in the process.
Yeah, absolutely.
Really good. Yeah.
Yeah, and with the volunteers, we're often volunteering with the same volunteers on different projects, so probably the volunteers where we had the most engagement, where we're literally, well, when we could, we were rubbing shoulders side to side. Now it's a little bit more distant between that, but it's still possible to
Yeah.
have that type of in-person connection that's meaningful, that's significant, and often, as I say, churns up stuff in people's hearts and minds that they often never, really considered before.
Mm. Yeah, that's great. And such a sense of community. And like you said, just getting stuck in, especially during this
Mm,
time when so many people are feeling isolated or just itchy and restless and wanting to do something
yeah,
still amongst the more lockdowns. So
yeah, yeah.
can you share any ways, you mentioned the website and the kind of volunteer centers, are there other ways people can get involved or link in or yeah, kind of what advice would you give people wanting to get stuck in?
Sure, yeah. Well, anyone that's interested in volunteering, they could email volunteer at servethecity.ie. So we have a dedicated email address for volunteers that are interested. Alternatively, Serve the City Dublin and Serve the City Galway are on Facebook. So you
Okay.
go to our Facebook pages and you could either leave a message there for us and we'll get back to you. Um, so they're sort of the main ways in which individuals can get involved. If you're part of a community or a group or an organization and you're kind of saying, yeah, maybe three, four, five of us or whatever would like to get involved, then you might just sort of want to give me an email and I'd be happy to have a sort of a follow-up chat. And my email is simply Alan, ALAN, at servethecity.ie. And I'd be happy to chat, with you kind of one-to-one, and maybe just so I can understand a little bit more about your group, your fellowship, or your church, whatever it is, and happy to have a chat then and see how we might be able to help plug you in some way.
And can anyone do a referral? I know you mentioned the referral forms, but if I see a neighbor's situation that's maybe more than I can help with during this time,
Yeah.
can normal people, average people, do referrals as well?
Absolutely, yeah. And
Cool.
what we're finding a lot is that people have maybe got involved in just helping their neighbor in an informal way, and
Yeah.
that's fine. Informal volunteering is a big part of the what our culture and society needs right now. But if they kind of find, this needs to be on a little bit more of a formal kind of basis,
Yeah,
or maybe, I can't do it all the time, so maybe we need some others to help volunteer. So absolutely, anybody
that's
can,
brilliant.
make a referral in that sense, in that they're either currently involving and they need some help, or they see a situation on their street, on their road, in their estate, that could do with help from a group of volunteers.
Yeah,
Then more than happy to take a referral from an individual as well.
that's brilliant. Thanks, Alan. Is there anything else either one of you want to say before we wrap up?
Thank you, Alan. I think it's brilliant just hearing
Yeah.
about Serve the City. Thank you for all the work you're doing and your
Mm,
board and all the volunteers. And
mm,
just great. It's just great to challenge our vision of what it looks like to bring the kingdom of God to our city. And
mm,
Serve the City has not stopped during lockdown.
Yeah,
You've
mm,
adapted and
mm,
you've remained flexible and agile. And I think that's a real challenge for us as we navigate
mm, mm,
these times. And so it's been really refreshing just to hear new ways that we can engage and partner with God in terms of what He's doing across the city. So
mm.
yeah,
Oh,
thank you.
well,
yeah.
thank you guys, and thanks for
Thank
your
you.
support. Great to
Yeah,
chat.
brilliant. Thanks, Alan.
See ya. Bye, guys.